Welcome back to Aggie Chats. This is episode 2 of our pregame mentality and routine series. My name is Ashley Salem.
And my name is Kayla Wolfe. This is a podcast run by student athletes for student athletes. Make sure to go check out our first episode. It's up on YouTube with UCD SAAC Athletics.
And today our guest is Miss Abby Leighton from women's golf. Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for having me.
Tell us about what you do in golf. Golf, yeah.
Let's see, I'm a third year here at Davis. I am a human development major, aspiring to have a philosophy minor. We're going to see how that goes. Still figuring it out. And yeah, I'm on the women's golf team. So, don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah. Can you start just by talking about the kinds of feelings and emotions that you get before a game?
I feel like kind of when I was looking through the questions, the one thing that came up a lot was anxiety. And I feel like I've been struggling with that kind of throughout my golf career almost. And I know a lot of people get these feelings of nervousness, and I feel like I go through a lot of nerves when right before a tournament. And so we get to the course an hour before, and I feel like as soon as I get there, it's feelings of excitement and nervousness, and for a while I was struggling with feelings of anxiety of just worrying a lot when I was going onto the course. But we've been working with a mental performance coach, and she's been great, and so I feel like I have a lot of adrenaline when I first get to the golf course, and I'm just ready to play and super excited. And
yeah, definitely. I feel like a ton of emotions that come before the game for sure.
I feel like a lot of athletes do. It's a mix of if you are a sport that has a bunch of people watching, it's that. At least for me, we don't have a lot of people watching, we're not in a stadium and whatnot, so it's just seeing all the golfers there, and we do have spectators, but it's just being around people that you know, and all the coaches, and seeing everyone in their gear. It's gets me hyped up, and definitely nervous, but still very excited to be there.
Right, absolutely.
Would you say that it's a solo performance sort of sport, or because you're the only one hitting out there, you know?
It's complicated. I feel golf individual, it's an individual sport originally, right? Growing up playing golf, through junior golf, through playing as a kid, it was just individual. And then in college, they decided to group you together and have it be a team sport, kind of like equestrian. Right. So it's kind of odd. At least for us, when we're playing, there's 2 separate leaderboards. And so 5 people travel to the tournament, and we all play 18 holes. Some days we play 36, and at the end of the 54-hole tournament, they add up the top 4 scores of the team, and then that is counted for the team leaderboard. However, there's also an individual leaderboard where, say, you do really well out of your team, but then your team doesn't do as well, you can still win as an individual and place top 5. And so it's you kind of have these 2 aspects that are kind of going on when you're playing. So it's kind of unique in that. So it's a weird dynamic.
Yeah, you can do well for both of them, for yourself or for your team. And that's kind of motivating that you do it for both parts of it.
It's motivating. It's also, it gets kind of complicated, right? Because it's when you put an individual into a team sport like this, that's not necessarily meant to be a team sport. It's kind of you're switching your mentality from okay, I'm playing for myself and I'm the only one out there, to you have to keep in mind that you're not just playing for yourself anymore. It's not just on you. Whatever you do on the golf course affects your team and how you place. And when you're out there, you don't know how your team's doing until literally you finish the round and you see the leaderboard. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah. Oh, you really have to be malleable to that too, I guess. Just being placed into it in college and being expected to just perform that way as well. That's something totally new.
It is. And I think my freshman year was definitely a hard transition, but also I was looking forward to that. Ever since I was younger, 8 to 10 years old, I knew I wanted to play college golf. That's just, I wanted to be on a team. It's lonely when you're playing an individual sport like that. And so to have a couple of girls, we have 7 girls on the team right now that just have the same goals as you and want to perform well. It's just refreshing, and it makes it more fun. So
sure.
Absolutely.
When does the pregame routine sort of begin for you? Is it practice during the week, or is it more of the day of? And can you kind of walk us through that process?
Yeah, so I feel for us, the pregame routine kind of starts a couple days before. And so we'll tie our practices into what we're expecting to like encounter at the course that we're playing at. So if we know it's like super small fairways where you have to be super precise off the tee, we kind of do drills in practice to kind of prepare that for us. And then also, like, for me, I think it's really important to focus on other aspects of like your life to prepare. It's not just like the things that you do on the course and in practice that affect your performance. It's the nutrition, it's the sleep, it's the hydration. So like I make sure to drink a gallon or more water like a couple days before, consecutively before a round, because I know that affects me. And then also like keeping my nutrition pretty good, like making sure I'm getting like starting to build up my carbs a couple days before, because I know like I'm gonna be using a lot of carbs and stuff on the course. And then also like getting really good sleep, so making sure I get like 8 to 10 hours of sleep a couple days before, and like really prioritizing getting my circadian rhythm in check before we go out there. Just like I think it all kind of accumulates to having a good performance, you know.
I like that you allow yourself and your body to really transition into that, you know, at the meet, at the match, at the game mentality and physical state, because when you go in and you just carb load all at once, like that can't be good for you. So making sure that when you're getting your body physically in that state, you're also getting your mind in that state. So I really like that.
Yeah.
How much practice do you think is the right amount of practice before a game? Do you like to practice more? Do you think that practicing more can affect how you play? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I feel like this is also like an educational talk, because I don't think people really understand what we do as golfers, at least from like other sports and outside perspective. So it's cool to like talk about it. I mean, we practice from anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6 hours a day, depending on what we're doing. And that's doing different things. And I think for me, and it works for every other person. Like I know some of my teammates, they practice more than me. Some of my teammates practice less. And like it all works differently for people, you know. But right before a game, for me, if I'm focusing on too much of technique, then I feel like that really messes me up. And so sometimes if I'm like really trying to perfect something in my swing, or like my putting, my chipping, or just really overthinking these things, then I feel like it really affects my performance poorly. But it's not necessarily about the amount of time that you practice for us, because I mean, at least for golf, you can practice for like multiple hours and you don't get too exhausted, just like other sports like soccer. You can't really like practice for 4 hours because that would just be ineffective at that point. But at least for me, I think it's the mental component that really matters, you know. So I'm more focused on like outcome things and focusing on like hitting to targets instead of overthinking like, am I in this right position in my swing, because then it gets me unfocused on what I need to be focused on for when we actually go out and play in the tournament.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with because golf is such an individual sport, and you talked about there's so many different components of it, I'm sure you have to set goals for yourself. Can you talk about how you set a goal for either the week before a match or when you're there, the goals the day of, and how do you choose those goals and execute them?
Yeah, I think growing up, I was super goal oriented. Like I loved achieving things. Like even in school, I'm like, I love to get like, you know, a gold star or like academic achievement awards and whatnot. And so I was very like outcome based. And so coming into college, I think I was like, oh, I want to be golfer of the year. I want to be this place on the team. I want to achieve this, shoot this number. And I realized really quickly when I was setting those outcome goals that it was actually detrimental to my performance, because I was putting so much pressure on achieving these things that I lost focus on the process to reach those goals. And so, I mean, we work with a mental performance coach, which I recommend to anyone. Like it's really upped our game as a team and as a whole, but really with our team culture and what we emphasize is emphasizing process goals. So like for practice, right? Like I show up every day and I'm like, how am I going to get 1% better today? Like what in my process am I going to achieve today? And that's either like working on an extra thing in my putting, or showing up with extra snacks, or like making sure I'm hydrated, just like things that are going to make me better in the long term, and not necessarily like focusing on like the thing I want to achieve. And so when I show up to a tournament, I really try not to focus on the leaderboard. I actually try not to look at the leaderboard, because for me personally, it just messes with my head, and then I put pressure on like, oh, I'm like in third place right now, in contention for first place, and for me, I just start to overthink, and then I'm aware of that fact that I'm in like contention for what I do want, but I think it actually kind of counteracts what I'm trying to do. So like the day of, I try to focus on like a controllable. Like this past tournament that we just had, my controllable was holding my finish and like having a neutral to positive reaction to all my shots. And golf is so mental, where those little process things like translate hugely into our performance. So it's like I try to focus on the process more than actual like numbers or like statistics and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. And then I feel like once you focus on that, then the rest of that will come. The golfer of the year and the other awards that you can get, that'll all follow if you just focus on getting 1% better each time. I really like that.
100%. And I know like a huge thing, like a quote that's really popular, it's like, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And so I feel like, you know, I talk a lot about this stuff because golf is, again, so mental, but I feel like every single sport can benefit from these things that I'm talking about with like mental wellness and all these things. It's like when you do focus on the journey and focus on the things that matter, like why am I showing up to practice every day? Like why do I actually like to play my sport, you know? And like when you answer these questions and start to get a little bit more introspective and philosophical about like, why are you putting in this hard work? You know, what are you going to gain out of it? Because at the end of the day, it's like hard work is not going to guarantee you a positive outcome. Like I can work my butt off for 4 years and like not achieve the goal that I set my freshman year. But it's not necessarily about, and this is what I've come to realize, the hard work that I'm putting in is not necessarily because I want to achieve these goals. It's because I do like to work hard, and like in the long run in life, working hard is a good skill to have, you know, and like it makes me feel good to know that I'm putting in 100% of my effort, because that's just how I like to live my life. And so I feel like looking at the journey and the processes in that way, instead of being like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get to my goal, because if you don't get to your goal, then you're like, well, what was all that for? So
Totally.
You kind of mentioned a couple times this mental health counselor, or you guys were working with somebody as well.
Yeah.
What's something that you've kind of learned that you've really taken to heart, or that really hit home for you to kind of give you this really, you have a really healthy outlook on like life and like working hard. So total props to that.
Oh,
But,
seriously.
like something that you've kind of learned from your mental health coach, or
Amy, she's our mental performance coach, and I started working with her before our fall season and I started working with her because I was just at a complete loss, because I was ready to quit my sport. I wasn't seeing the performance goals that I wanted to see. I just like, I felt like I was doing all this hard work and doing all these things, and I just didn't see any results, and that really irked me. And I knew it was mental, but I didn't know how to get over that mental hurdle. And for me, last year specifically, I struggled with really bad anxiety on the golf course. Like every time I would step onto the first tee, my hands would start to shake for the first 1 or 2 holes, and I was having this really bad physiological response to wanting to do well. And it's not healthy, you know? And so like, I may seem like I'm talking in like this healthy mindset, but it's like, it's been a year of work of just like introspective work with her. And like, if I could tell you one thing that has helped, like I would, but it's just been this whole process of like understanding that like golf is not who I am. It's just something that I do. And it's a really hard thing, I feel like, for all student athletes to come to that conclusion, because it's like something to get to this level, to be playing at a Division I college sport. It's like we've had to give up so much throughout our life to get to this point, and work so hard and give up so many things and sacrifice so many things, that it's hard not to identify yourself with the sport. Like I am a golfer, you know? And so I feel like taking a step back, again, like being like, why do I even play golf? Do I even enjoy golf? And that's something that I had to come to terms with. And I do really love golf, and I do really love playing golf. And so kind of taking step-by-step pieces of like, okay, why am I doing this? And one, breaking it down, like, why am I doing this? And like, if you do really love the game and love the sport and you do want to continue, it's like, okay, if you do really love it, you can't focus on what it's going to give you. Like, you may or may go professional after college. I know a lot of athletes are thinking about that. And so if that's your goal, cool. But it's like, just because you're working hard now doesn't mean these goals, these championships, you going professional is going to work out for you. It just, life is not fair like that, you know? And so I feel like coming down to reality and really realizing that, she has helped me with. And just like helping us through every single little like roadblock that has come in. Like, we realized she worked me through my like I was having anxiety attacks on the golf course and panic attacks because I was so wrapped up and like, if I don't like make a par on the first hole, then my whole round's ruined. But I wasn't consciously thinking that. That was going back in my subconscious. So she helped me bring that out to get over this roadblock. Like, okay, even if I do make a bogey on the first hole, that doesn't mean I can't shoot under par, you know? And so it's kind of, and then eventually like I noticed that like my hands would shake less and less as I was like not so much focusing on like the outcome. And I think that's like the biggest thing to take away from her and I working together. It's like it's not about the outcome, it's about like the process. And so even when I'm like over my putts, I'm like, okay, am I getting the speed right, am I getting the line right? If I do get those two things right and I don't make the putt, then I'm okay. I have made the putt even though I didn't like actually make it in the hole. So it's like, I think these things could apply to a lot of sports. Like, just because you don't like, for example, like score a goal, you know, or like make the pattern that you want to make. Like, if you do everything right, then you can't be mad at yourself. If you tried your hardest and like give it your 100%, then like there's just nothing else you can do. And like having peace in that and being truly okay with that.
Yeah. I appreciate your raw honesty with that too, because it is something that's really hard to talk about, and that fluctuating emotion between, sometimes you feel like you're on top of the world and you have a really great day in your sport, and sometimes you just really do not have a good day.
Yeah.
And that's fine, and that just being able to work through one of those really bad days is one of the hardest things you can do too.
It is, especially when you're so tied to the outcome. Like I remember, like again, I just wasn't playing well last spring, and it's like I was going through a roadblock like every single, you guys probably, I don't know if like 80 means anything, but like I was constantly shooting like 80 when I was playing, and I just didn't understand why. Like I was hitting the ball well, I was doing all these things well, I just couldn't understand it. And then I started working with our mental performance coach, and that's when like it's okay. Like sometimes it's gonna happen. You're not gonna be performing your 100% best every single day.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's okay. And like, so when we got to our fall season, I started working with her, and I shot like an okay score. It wasn't my best, but I literally like bombed the last hole in front of my teammates, in front of like all the teams that were watching, because they kind of circle up on the last hole as you're coming down the fairway, and it was awful, but I still came out with a smile on my face, being like, okay, I played 17 holes really, really well, and that's progress, and I'm okay with that, you know. And I was able to like see my teammates, and they did super well, and I knew that even though there was one hole that I didn't do well, my score still counted, and it still helped the team. And so like kind of having, again, that like introspective thought of like, this like bad feeling that you're having right now, you're not gonna remember in like maybe even like a week, you know, or like a month, or like years, you know. I still do remember the one hole, but just like I remember more like the feeling that I got after I had that, and like being able to come to my teammates with a smile on my face, when like a couple months before that I would have been an absolute mess. So
You've talked a lot about performance, and I feel like as student athletes we're constantly being measured by how we're performing. Can you talk about the challenges that you face by being both a student, like a Division I student and athlete, and how you've been able to mentally overcome those challenges?
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
And I think coming into college, and I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but I feel like it was so glorified to be like a Division I student athlete. Like, it's like, okay, you get the gear, you get to travel, and like all these good aspects are still there, but they don't really candidly talk about like it's a struggle. Like, it's a struggle, especially at like a highly ranked academic school like Davis. It's hard to like, even like the easiest major here, it's not that easy, you know. And so I feel like I had a real reality check my freshman year. It's like, whoa, especially coming off of COVID, it's like I didn't know how to study. I didn't know like how to actually take a test, because I hadn't done it in like 2 years. And so I really had to like look at my life. And my swing coach back home always gave me this analogy of like pegs on a wheel. And so if you have your life, right, you have your social life, you have your sport, and you have your school and like family, whatever. And these pegs like need to be balanced in some way. If you one kind of takes over, say like you put so much time in your athletics and like your school is starting to fail, the wheel is gonna not turn as easy. And so, but also that looks different. Like it's not always giving like a third of your time to every single part of your life. And so for me, academics was a super important part for me coming to Davis. That's why I chose Davis. It was the best of both worlds, but I quickly realized, at least for me, in like my intelligence and brain capacity, I wasn't going to be a straight A student. And that's just like the matter of fact. It's a matter of fact of like, for me being in a STEM major, it's hard. It's really hard, especially to try to get an A in all my STEM classes and then try to be the best I can be at golf and then try to like make new friends at a new university. It's hard. And so I feel like for me, I do a lot of like mental check-ins with myself. Like, how am I actually doing? And like, I'll be honest, this quarter has been really hard for me. Winter quarter in Davis is really, really hard. I feel like the third year or fourth year, it kind of sucks. And so I was even talking to my mom about this, like at our tournament, I was like, I just feel so stressed. And she's like, I can tell. It's like the way, it's just your demeanor. And now it's spilling into your golf, it's spilling into your social life. And so you have to really have these like reality checks of like, am I giving my time correctly to the right things? And so it's like, I am killing myself trying to like study so hard for my classes and still not getting A's. And but like that's okay because I'm still giving 100% to those things. And like maybe I could just like, and I feel like I'm giving all to myself to my golf and it's still not like 100% perfect. And same with my social life, but it's like I'm giving 100% to all these things and for me it's burning me out. And so something has to give. And so like for me, I have to make like times in my day where I can just have me time, and that's not like cleaning my room, that's not like doing homework, that's not thinking about golf. It's literally like vegging on my favorite Netflix TV show and eating a good popcorn snack at night and like doing a night routine. And so I have been really slacking on that in the past couple of months, like have not been doing that, and I realized that today. And so it's like making sure you're having time to like find the joy by yourself outside of these like responsibilities that you have. So
you're just spread so thin as an athlete too. A lot of people, it's really prevalent. We like joke around, it's like seasonal depression, especially in the winter time, but it's just so hard to juggle all those things at once and finding a balance. And like, it's never going to be perfect. I feel like you need to practice mental health every day, kind of like you practice your sport. And it's not going to be perfect. Your performance isn't going to be great all the time, but a good step in the right direction. It sounds like you've kind of realized and self-regulated, like, hey, I'm not giving myself enough me time. I need to fix that, which I think is a great step, and that's something that's really good and self-regulatory that you do.
100%. And I feel like, I mean, I'm not 100% perfect. I don't think anyone's 100% perfect, but like having those check-ins or like people that you care about, even, it's like my teammates will like come up to me and be like, hey, you seem off, are you okay? Like, and just having like talks with the people that you care about and having like them say, like giving you the space to like vent and like figure out what you're going through. Like my mom, my boyfriend, my teammates, like I can talk to them about these things and they can help me, and like through talking to them, even my coach, I can talk to her about it, and talking to them about this like made me realize like, okay, I need to take a step back for a little bit and like realize that like I need more me time.
That's so important. Well, I guess if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice, what would it be? We've talked a lot about, you know, making sure your mental state is healthy, your physical state. What's one piece of advice that you've got?
I would say, and I feel like I try to preach this as much as possible, and it's something I've been working on. It's like, and I kind of touched on this, it's like, we are not our sport. And I think we get so caught up on that, especially like certain sports. It's kind of like, and I think more team-oriented sports too, it's like where you can switch people out. It's like you're just machines, right? Like your coaches put you in, the institution puts you in to perform as entertainment. Like this is like our job pretty much. And so I think a lot of the times people can get caught up in the fact that like if they don't perform well, then they are worth nothing. And that's not the case. Like you as a person is enough. Like we are enough as people. And I think really, and kind of connecting to that, taking the time to figure out, like, who am I without my sport? Because eventually, like, your sport's gonna end. It may not be like at the end of college, it may be before, it may be after, but it's like eventually we're gonna be without it in some capacity. And so, like, figuring out early on, like, who am I without golf? And I've had to take a lot of time to do that, but I feel like I have found myself in, like, the hobbies that I like to do, and, like, who I am as a person, and, like, my key characteristics of, like, this is who I am. I am not a golfer. I am Abby. This is me. So I feel like, I don't know, every student athlete should take the time before it's like you're forced into that, like, existential crisis of, like, oh, I don't have my sport anymore. Like, who am I?
Yeah.
You know? And so I feel like everyone should take the time to do that and, like, really remember that, like, you are enough as, like, the person that you are. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that, and I feel like a lot of what you've said is going to be able to resonate with a lot of our listeners, student athletes, professionals that are in the sport. Everything that you said is very relevant, and we're all thinking, you know, how can we get better mentally? How can we be better physically and perform better? So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah.
And make sure to watch this video on YouTube. I guess you already are
Yeah.
at this point.
Made it this far.